The courtroom shimmered with alien technology, an otherworldly blend of sleek metallic curves and pulsating bioluminescence. Holographic screens floated in midair, translating every utterance into a dozen languages. The air thrummed with the low hum of the arbiter's dais, a platform elevated high above the crowd, where the alien judge presided. He was a towering figure, his shimmering green carapace catching the light as he regarded the assembled beings with multifaceted eyes. His name was Judge Zraug, a Xantharian renowned for his ruthless intellect and his disdain for the chaotic species known as humans. Samantha, Sam, Graves stepped into this alien amphitheater, her small frame dwarfed by the grandeur of the chamber. She was 17, clad in an ill-fitting jumpsuit that marked her as a detainee. Her messy brown hair and wide, curious eyes made her look even younger than she was. To the casual observer, she seemed entirely out of place amidst the solemn grandeur of the Galactic Tribunal. A human child? Is this some kind of farce? Judge Zraug's voice reverberated through the hall, laced with derision. His mandibles clicked in a gesture of disdain. Do your people take our justice system for a circus? Sam swallowed hard, but didn't falter. She stood straight, her hands clasped behind her back. Inside, though, her mind raced. This was the moment she had been preparing for, though not in the way anyone here would guess. "I'm here to represent myself," she said, her voice steady despite the tremor she felt in her chest. The words hung in the air, and a murmur rippled through the spectators. Most of them were non-human, their features ranging from the aquatic elegance of the Vorthen to the crystalline beauty of the Caliph. The idea of a mere human, and a child, no less, daring to challenge the Galactic Tribunal was nothing short of absurd. The charges against her were serious. Sam was accused of tampering with restricted interstellar technology, a crime punishable by exile or even death. The evidence was damning. A hacked Starship navigational core, security footage of her accessing restricted areas, and encrypted files traced back to her personal device. Yet, Sam knew something no one else in this room did. She wasn't just an accused teenager. She was the architect of her own defense, a prodigy who had spent years mastering interstellar law and alien cultures in secret. Her journey to this point had been anything but ordinary. Sam's mother had been ambassador to the Galactic Union, and her father, a mechanic with an uncanny knack for reverse engineering alien tech. Growing up amidst diplomatic dinners and engineering workshops, Sam had absorbed knowledge like a sponge. By the time she was 12, she could recite the Xantharian Penal Code and dismantle a quantum drive in the same afternoon. But her parents' deaths in a diplomatic shuttle crash had left her orphaned, bitter, and determined to carve out her own path, a path that had led her here. The courtroom's air felt heavy, charged with the weight of expectation. Judge Zraug's mandibles twitched as he leaned forward, his multifaceted eyes narrowing. "You claim the right to self-representation, a bold move for one so unseasoned. Proceed, then, and amuse us with your defense." Sam's lips twitched in a faint smile. She had expected this condescension. It was, in fact, a key part of her strategy. People underestimated her. They always had. And she had learned to weaponize that. As she stepped into the center of the courtroom, the holographic display above her came to life, projecting the details of the case. Sam's eyes scanned the data, and her mind began to piece together her opening statement. Around her, the spectators whispered, their voices a tapestry of curiosity and skepticism. "Before I begin," she said, her voice cutting through the murmurs, I would like to invoke Article 17 of the Galactic Charter. Judge Zraug's mandibles froze mid-click. Article 17 was an obscure clause, seldom used. It granted the accused the right to challenge the tribunal's evidence if they could demonstrate reasonable doubt about its authenticity. It was a move that required not just courage, but an intricate understanding of interstellar law. You tread dangerous ground, human, Zraug hissed. Very well. Present your argument. Sam took a deep breath. She wasn't just here to clear her name. She was here to expose the corruption that had led to her arrest, a web of lies and deceit woven by those who had underestimated her. The stage was set, and the first act had begun. Sam's voice faltered for the briefest moment, her composure cracking like ice under pressure. The weight of the tribunal's collective gaze pressed down on her as she began her argument, her palms clammy against the polished surface of the defendant's console. The holographic display flickered, showing the security footage that painted her as the unequivocal culprit, grainy but damning nonetheless. Yet, her resolve hardened as she reminded herself of the stakes. Failure meant not just her life, but the triumph of those who thrived in the shadows of power. The footage presented, she began, her voice steadying, has been manipulated. The timestamp anomalies alone are indicative of forgery, a deliberate attempt to frame me. I request a forensic analysis of the file's metadata, which I believe will confirm its alteration. A low murmur swept through the gallery. Judge Zraug's mandibles clicked in irritation. You accuse the tribunal's investigators of incompetence or corruption. Be careful, human. I accuse no one, Your Honor. I merely seek the truth. Sam's words were measured, but her heart thundered in her chest. She had just challenged the integrity of the most powerful judicial body in the galaxy. From his seat among the prosecution, a Loxian lawyer named Skrev, a sinewy creature with translucent, eel-like skin, rose to his full height. His voice was a serpentine hiss. The accused's claims are baseless. The evidence has been verified by the tribunal's top experts. Her attempt to discredit it is a desperate ploy. Sam clenched her fists beneath the console, frustration bubbling within her. Skrev was a known enforcer of the Galactic Tribunal's harsher policies, his reputation as a ruthless prosecutor preceding him. He represented everything Sam despised about this system, a willingness to crush dissent under the guise of order. Then you won't object to a neutral analysis, Sam countered, her voice cutting through the tension like a blade. If my claim is unfounded, it will only strengthen your case. Skrev's lipless mouth curled in what might have been a sneer. Time is a luxury we cannot afford. The tribunal's resources will not be squandered on baseless whims. Before Judge Zraug could respond, a voice from the gallery interrupted. I volunteer to conduct the analysis. The speaker was a Caliph, a crystalline being whose body refracted light into a mesmerizing array of colors. Their voice was soft yet resonant, like the chime of glass bells. The truth must be our priority. The room fell silent, the tension thick enough to cut. Zraug's multifaceted eyes narrowed as he regarded the Caliph. Very well. Proceed. As the Caliph began their analysis, Sam's mind raced. She couldn't rely on this alone. She needed to dismantle the prosecution's case piece by piece. But as she plotted her next move, Skrev struck. While we indulge this distraction, he said, his tone oozing condescension, I present additional evidence. He gestured to the holographic display, which now showed encrypted communications supposedly intercepted from Sam's personal device. These messages outline her intent to access restricted areas and tamper with critical systems. They reveal a premeditated act of sabotage. Sam's stomach churned. She recognized the encryption style. It was her own. But she also knew she hadn't written those messages. Someone had replicated her digital signature. Her voice trembled with controlled fury as she addressed the court. "These messages are fabrications," she said, her eyes locking with Skrev's unblinking gaze. "Someone with access to my encryption key created them to implicate me. I request an analysis of the timestamps and transmission origins." Skrev's sneer deepened. "Convenient. You claim forgery at every turn, yet offer no evidence to support your innocence." "Innocence doesn't need to be proven," Sam shot back, her voice rising. "The burden of proof lies with the accuser. Or has the Galactic Tribunal abandoned that principle?" The chamber erupted in whispers. Even Zraug's imposing figure seemed to shrink slightly under the weight of her words. But Skrev was unrelenting. He leaned forward, his eel-like form coiling as he spoke. "You are not as clever as you think, human. Your arrogance will be your undoing." Sam's jaw tightened, but she refused to waver. Her mind replayed the events that had led her here, the moments of doubt, the quiet nights spent poring over alien legal texts, the resolve that had carried her through. She couldn't give in. Not now. As the Calitha's analysis continued and the courtroom buzzed with tension, Sam felt the weight of her isolation. Yet, she also felt the flicker of something else. Defiance. This wasn't just a fight for her freedom. It was a battle against a system that thrived on crushing those who dared to challenge it. Judge Zraug's voice cut through the noise, his tone colder than before. "We will reconvene once the Calitha's findings are complete. Until then, the accused remains in custody." As the guards moved to escort her out, Sam cast one last look at the holographic display. She didn't yet have all the answers, but she had something more important: the determination to find them. And for the first time since this ordeal began, she felt the faintest glimmer of hope. The courtroom was silent as the Caliph rose to deliver their findings. Their crystalline forms shimmered in the light, refracting colors that danced across the room. Every being present leaned forward, their collective breath held in anticipation. Sam sat rigid in her seat, her hands gripping the edge of the console in front of her. This moment would either vindicate her or seal her fate. "The analysis is complete," the Caliph announced, their voice melodic yet firm. "The security footage has indeed been tampered with. Metadata discrepancies confirm that portions of the recording were altered post-capture, likely to incriminate the defendant." A ripple of shock swept through the gallery. Even Judge Zraug, who had maintained an air of detached superiority, seemed momentarily taken aback. His multifaceted eyes flickered as he processed the revelation. "Order." Zraug's voice thundered, silencing the whispers. He turned his gaze to the prosecution. "Skrev, do you have an explanation for this?" Skrev's translucent skin darkened, a sign of agitation. He slithered forward, his movements unnervingly smooth. "Your Honor, while the evidence may have been compromised, the intercepted communications remain irrefutable proof of the defendant's intent." Sam stood, her voice cutting through the charged atmosphere. "Those messages were forged as well. I demand an analysis of their origins." The Caliph nodded. "I have already begun the process." Initial findings suggest the messages did not originate from the defendant's device, but were instead routed through a series of proxies to obscure their true source. The room erupted again, this time with a mix of outrage and disbelief. Sam felt a surge of vindication, but knew the fight wasn't over. Screv wasn't one to back down easily. "This is a travesty," Screv hissed, his voice sharp with anger. "The accused has manipulated this court from the beginning, exploiting obscure legal loopholes to deflect from her crimes." Sam's eyes narrowed. "The only manipulation here is the one orchestrated to frame me, and I intend to prove it." Judge Zraug raised a clawed hand, demanding silence. "Enough. This tribunal will not descend into chaos. Caliph, how soon can you complete your analysis?" "Within the hour, Your Honor," the Caliph replied. Zraug's mandibles twitched as he considered the situation. "Very well. We will recess until the analysis is complete." Sam sat alone in her holding cell, staring at the sterile, metallic walls. Her mind refused to settle, replaying every moment of the trial and the conspiracy that had brought her here. The faces of those she'd trusted flickered in her memory, mingling with the venomous gaze of Screv. It was as if the weight of every decision she'd made had culminated in this moment. She could hear the faint hum of the station's systems, a rhythmic vibration that seemed to echo her own heartbeat. The isolation wasn't just physical. It was a reminder of how far she'd come and how much farther she had to go. She thought about her parents, her little brother back on Earth, and the promise she'd made to them before leaving for the Galactic Consortium Academy. "I'll make you proud." Now, the promise felt like both a lifeline and a burden. Would they see her as a hero if she succeeded, or just another name lost in the endless void of the tribunal's justice system? An hour later, Sam was escorted back into the courtroom. The atmosphere was even tenser than before. The Caliph stood in the center, their form glowing softly. "The analysis of the communications is complete," they announced. The messages were traced back to a server cluster on Proxima Station, operated by a known associate of Screv. Gasps echoed through the chamber. Screv's skin darkened further, his body coiling defensively. "This is preposterous," he spat. "A blatant attempt to discredit me." Sam rose to her feet. "Your Honor, I demand that this associate be brought in for questioning. The truth is unraveling, and we cannot stop now." Judge Zraug's multifaceted eyes locked onto Screv. For the first time, there was a hint of fury in his voice. "Screv, you have brought disgrace upon this tribunal. Your conduct will be investigated immediately. Guards, take him into custody." The room erupted in chaos as Screv protested vehemently, his hisses and shouts filling the chamber. Sam remained standing, her expression a mix of relief and determination. This wasn't over. Not yet. Later, as the gallery emptied and the courtroom grew quiet, Sam found herself standing before Judge Zraug. The once condescending alien now regarded her with something approaching respect. "You have been vindicated," Zraug said, his tone measured. "The charges against you are hereby dismissed. The tribunal owes you an apology for this miscarriage of justice." Sam's voice was steady as she replied, "What I want is accountability. An independent investigation into the individuals responsible for this conspiracy. They must face justice." Zraug nodded slowly. "Your request is granted. You have exposed a rot within our system, and for that you have my gratitude. Perhaps this will serve as a lesson to us all." As Sam left the courtroom, the weight on her shoulders felt lighter, but only slightly. She had won the battle, but the war against corruption was far from over. The faces of those who had supported her, the Caliph, the few voices in the gallery who had dared to murmur their support, reminded her that she wasn't alone in this fight. Walking out into the station's main concourse, she paused to look out a massive viewport. Stars stretched endlessly before her, a reminder of how vast the galaxy was and how small she seemed in comparison. But for the first time in weeks, she felt something new. Not just relief, but hope. Hope that she could make a difference. Hope that the truth still mattered. The journey wasn't over, but she was ready for whatever came next.